Yeah, it's been a minute.
It really has.
Yeah, wow.
But they think we're going away, and then we show back up, and they're like, what?
Yeah, what the hell? We consider that rejection, which is the title of this video. Rejecting
rejection.
Yes. How many... Well, I guess there's so many different ways we could probably talk about this topic, but I would suppose that we probably should just talk about what rejection is. No?
Yeah.
So
and how rejection feels.
Because it does kind of... Rejection is just being a word, and even just the thought of rejection creates a sensation in the body that doesn't feel right.
Right.
So it's like you're ejecting yourself from, I guess, whatever it is that you're experiencing in that moment. You're resisting what is, or feeling resisted in what is.
Correct.
So some of the ways that rejection happens is sometimes when we have a belief system and somebody doesn't have your belief system and they don't really agree with your belief system, they find a way to say things to you that kind of results in rejection. I mean, we've watched that over the last few months, and I think that it's probably been one of the biggest challenges that we all have, whether it's in relationships or connections, is the ability to feel rejected. And then when we feel rejected, we want to point at somebody as they have done something to us, where we don't even see that we are the primary of how we take care of ourselves.
Right.
Anything that... Does that sound right?
That's... Yeah.
So,
that sounds right.
So if you think about things that have happened to you, you learned rejection long before any of this other stuff happened, before the internet happened, before any of these things happened. You learn rejection at a very early age. But how do you go back and fix the rejection is probably where we all find, why are we holding on to certain moments in the past? There's certain things that happened to us, and then when it shows back up, we can always relate it back to rejection. That in itself is rejection.
It starts early. It starts very early. When when we start feeling rejected, even as young children, infants and young children, when divorces and separations and fathers and mothers choose other lifestyles or other people over you, fully conscious of wanting to keep you in their lives, but actually moving on to another life and leaving you behind in the old life. I thought we turned all the bells and whistles
I thought
off.
you did too, but you did shut your mouth. You just shut it all the way down.
All right.
So, yeah. See, you rejected that I said that.
I did.
One of the things that I think we see when we're doing coaching, or when we're going through boot camp, or even when we've been talking about the different factors of what causes rejection, it usually has to attach itself to your story.
Right.
And meaning your story, or your ego, your storyteller, which is the ego, is always on the lookout for any sign of rejection. When you feel a great love towards someone, whether it be mom or dad, and they have rejected you, you will associate that form of rejection with all other forms of rejection you'll experience in your life. It can be a friendship, it can be a relationship, it can be a marriage, it can be a soul connection, it can be a soulmate, it can be a lot of different variables, but ultimately the one thing that we always tend to overlook is how we reject ourselves. We don't even see that we reject ourselves with our judgment.
Of ourselves.
Of ourselves. Yeah, well, I mean, let's not even get started on that, because that could probably be a whole other video. But if we talk about how we can reject the things that we see outside of ourselves, we often misunderstand that we do it to ourselves first in order to experience outside. I think when we told our story and we were talking about all of the things that was happening in between there, one of the main things that we never really quite embraced was how we were rejecting ourselves and looking at the other person saying they did it.
Right.
And that's usually because you try to speculate, or you try to read the other person's mind, or you pay attention to how they're responding to you. and you ultimately start having that whisperer show up.
Well, isn't a lot of rejection comes from lack of communication?
All forms of rejection come from a lack of communication, including the communication you're supposed to have with yourself. So, an example, I think, if we could talk about a form of rejection that's even unseen. When you say, I love this person so much, and then somebody asks you, well, how do you feel about yourself? And you go, well, I'm not really fond of myself. What you've done is you found a way to make sure that rejection is going to enter anything. To include the love that you're saying you have for another person, how do you even know what that is if you haven't given it to you? So the rejection factor is going to show up at some point. Whether, even if you're doing this in silently, I have this great fear that if I reach out to them, they're going to reject me. You've just automatically found a way to reject yourself in a mental image that you're not even paying attention to. So then when you draw that, then you get to say to yourself, I told you so. So it's almost like you'll put yourself in a space to find rejection because you're thinking about rejection. And if rejection doesn't show up, then you can't be right, or you can't have this belief system that you're going to be rejected, not realizing that you're asking for it. It's
Expecting it.
We did great expectations already. And that any expectation you're going to have when it relates to rejection, I believe that you're going to get at some point until you see that you're on a cycle of finding a way to reject yourself repeatedly until you stop rejecting yourself.
Right.
So some of the ways you can stop rejecting yourself. First of all, remove judgment. Of yourself. Because this is one life that you have, and this is the human existence you're in this moment, and have the choice of saying, I make these mistakes. I make these mistakes is your judgment of whatever it was, that the decision that you made that was already past. Holding on to that and judging it is rejection. I said that right? We don't see it that way. But if you're going to make a decision or a choice to do something, and then you regret your choice, regret is another R word that's the same as rejection. You're rejecting what you did, you're rejecting what you said, you're rejecting how you act, you're judging all of these things that are showing up, and then you get to be validated in your rejection. Most of the time we don't see that because we're too busy looking for it outside of ourselves to not even see what we've done inside of ourselves to do it.
Right. But what happens then is the other R word just escaped me. Regret. So we eat a piece of chocolate or something unhealthy, and we regret it. And then for the next 10 days, we reject ourselves because we put a pound on or a few ounces on.
Mm-hmm.
And we look in the mirror, and because of that one decision,
rejection.
A year of rejection.
Well, there's rejection in the physical form, like you said. Then there's rejection in the emotional form. And then there's rejection of the sexual form. And the list probably could go on and on and on. The thing is this is almost an energy field of thought that seeks itself out to be validated, and you keep staying in it.
Assumption brings on so much rejection.
What is assumption?
Well, the person I'm involved with is not calling me back. The person I am involved with isn't texting me back. So we assume they are dead in a ditch, in a hotel room with somebody else, in a parking lot kissing someone else or making out. We assume all these things.
Yes. And
then we start feeling rejected. Well, why could this person do this to me? And the next thing that happens, that person walks through the door with a bouquet of flowers because they stopped off to get you flowers, but you're already in the mindset of rejection.
So,
Well, why'd you buy me the flowers?
Oh, well, yeah, there's that. Mm-hmm.
Who was you with? What was you doing?
Yes.
Because of assumption, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, assumption.
Assumption also has a silent way of doing things too, because if you, let's say that you are interested in this person and you keep running into one another, and you see that other person and you feel this connection there, and you go, well, I'm just going to face this way and look this way and act like I don't see them.
Oh.
And then we get mad when they don't come over and talk to us.
Mm.
We didn't even see the rejection we did to ourselves. When we have an interest in someone, we don't point to that interest and allow that interest to be known. We end up telling ourselves, no, they'll come over and talk to me. They'll come over and come into my energy field, which the energy field right now is saying, I don't even see your existence. Mm-hmm. And then we go, well, they rejected me. They didn't come over and talk to me. Oh. How's that working out for you? I mean, it's not going to work. And then we do I'm going to send them this real long email about how I feel. And then they get no response. And then they're rejected. But when they're sending it, they're going, you probably don't have to say anything. You don't need to send anything back. And they'll say all of these lines of rejection. And then when they get it, upset. And it does this whole shattering effect. One of the worst things that rejection does is shatter us to the point where we tell ourselves we aren't whole. It tells you you're not whole. You're not whole without this or that or the other or another person. That's self-rejection of the worst kind. You are whole no matter what you do. No matter who you are, no matter what moment it is. In this moment, even as you're watching this video, you are whole. Trying to convince yourself that you need another person or you need this thing or whatever else, that is rejection.
Rejection energy attracts rejection energy as well. Mm. So two people come together who are rejecting themselves. Wow. They end up rejecting one another.
And they blame you.
And they blame each other.
You didn't want to kiss me and you didn't want to put your arms around me. And it's like, wait a minute. It was almost like you're reading my mind. I go through the same thing. And you can see that rejection as an energy, if we embrace it and we're around somebody who's definitely connected to us, they're going to pick up on it and then they're going to go, it's them rejecting me. And you'll never even come to the point to where you don't see that you're rejecting yourself.
And it ends up in tragedy.
Right. And this kind of happened when I finally told the whole truth. I told myself that when I told the whole truth, I was going to lose everyone and everything. I didn't see that the rejection needed to show up in order for me to experience exactly what I said. And it did. And then as I sat there alone in my pity, I was still rejecting myself. It was almost like you further go down deep into something. And most people experience this part as, I don't know who I am, or they don't know, they feel disconnected in some way. And they don't even see that the disconnection was caused by the rejection that they said to themselves about themselves.
Something actually caught my attention this weekend when Lee and I were having a conversation about you don't.
Oh.
You don't. When you say that to somebody, you don't. You don't help. You don't hold my hand. You don't kiss me. You don't help with the trash. You don't hold me at night. You don't smile. You don't. So.
You don't share your emotional state.
Right. You don't communicate.
You
don't talk.
Go forever.
So then there's a mindset that goes along, and if you would just replace that before you speak it out of your mouth, I don't. Oh. And I would, in meditation and trying to clear thoughts, out of that came, if you just said I don't first, quietly in your head, I don't help with the laundry. Meaning, I'm going to go do the laundry. Would you help? Instead of, you don't help with the laundry. I just did it all.
Yeah, but let's talk about because I think that part is vital. Everything you just said, spot on. But I hope you all caught how she showed you what we call the rejection daisy shit chain. Yes, I said daisy shit chain. So let's understand how this works. You don't take out the trash. All of a sudden, I'll start taking out the trash. Then it becomes you don't give me any affection. Then I give affection,
You're
and I
too busy taking out the trash.
and too busy taking out the trash, and then I get the affection. So now here comes this big long list, and you don'ts continue to show up, and that's why you're saying if you do the I don'ts, you change it, because we spend too much time with don't want,
Can't.
don't do, can't. All of these
Won't.
magical words that are rejection, instead of saying what we do want, can have, should have, instead of shouldn't, and all of the other
Wouldn't.
opposites.
Won't.
The opposites will attract, right? I mean, there's a different way to say that before, but when you look at it this way, when it comes to rejection, the opposites do attract. If you come into an energy field of rejection, are you rejecting you?
There it is. We ask ourselves that question before we attack somebody else with what they're not doing.
I don't necessarily know that when we do that, we're actually paying attention to what we're doing to ourselves first.
Right.
I didn't. Even now, I think we still find that we have a self-rejection because there's so many different pockets of what you've experienced that your ego has learned and has created a habit out of when it comes to rejection or abandonment. We could go in a whole other page in that one. But it's really about the things that you learn to say inside your mind that wants to point outside of you. And you will reject others' information. You'll reject others' belief systems. And you're in the process of doing all of this, you've done something to yourself without even seeing that you didn't open up your mind to every possibility of the universe. Does not reject what the universal message is. So sometimes a universal message comes in the way of how you think. And if you keep rejecting you, and then other people reject you, then you lose your voice in it. You'll never develop that voice ever until you stop rejecting yourself. And this can happen to a child who went through some traumatic experience and nobody asked the child how they felt. Not asking the child how they felt on the inside, well, this is what happened, these were the events, I excuse and forgive everybody for what they did, and then that voice of yours gets silenced. And this is how we all learn how to stuff shit down, right? When you stuff shit down that bothers you, you're rejecting you. You can't say, well, I'm doing this because I don't want to hurt other people. It's funny because people will even say this statement to make rejection absent in their mind. I can't tell them the truth because I'm going to hurt them. So I'll just stuff it down. That is rejection.
That's big.
That's huge.
That's big.
Let me shove this down because this feels really amazing. No, it doesn't feel really amazing. It feels like shit. And the more stuff you shove down, the quieter you become, the more volatile, the more angry, the more you will attack others for no reason. Because you've already attacked yourself by rejecting yourself and your truth.
And you get tired of feeling bad. You get tired of being depressed. You get tired of being sad. You get tired of crying. You get tired of holding all this in. So you'll just attack the person closest to you.
It's funny.
It's always the person.
It's funny. We were a few weeks ago. I got diagnosed with a disease, and Sherry in her big beautiful heart was like, "Oh damn, we're gonna have to change our work schedule. We're gonna change our workload." And of course, there was some adjustment because of the things that I have to do now that I wasn't doing before. But it was really interesting because I was rejecting the disease. Now, that's really strange because in this form of rejection, it's not a bad thing.
Right.
But it's not a good thing either. Because the things that you will reject, you will not pay attention to it like you're just telling yourself you're not sick. And when you're telling yourself you're not sick, you won't take care of yourself.
Right.
So I had to tell myself I'm sick. I had to tell myself I need to take care of myself. I needed, and the thing is when we find that it could be cancer you find out you have, and you reject the cancer.
Disclaimer: Lee does not have cancer.
I don't have cancer, but the other part of it is that something that happens to us when another person is going through something, we tend to put ourselves last according to what the entire world wants outside, and make yourself last on the inside. And in that, what my thought process was as to why I wanted to reject the disease was I didn't want anything to change. I wanted our love to still flourish. I didn't want to feel like I was not in this partnership, in this union, in this way that we are together, and then all of a sudden start dropping off from that. So the thought process can sometimes be just as tricky. Oh, hi, Mike.
Yeah.
It can be just as tricky
Mike's
as it could be anything else. So when you pay attention to rejection,
and you wonder why I wear black. The dog blends in.
Yes, we saw you look like you're refusing rejection. See, these guys teach us how not to reject. They're probably, yes, we're talking, and then he walks away.
Yeah.
That wasn't rejection. I didn't feel rejected just
We
then.
didn't reject him.
No. But it's interesting how you can, if you start to look at the ways that you reject yourself, it is a choice. You can't stop doing that. Well, of course, another video from us. Don't worry, more to come.
More to come. Been busy, and but we're not gonna stop feeding you what our truth is, and yeah, we're gonna continue to do that always.
Yes, and know that our truth is only to help you find your belief system, not ours.
Right.
We understand that there are tools needed for that. That's why we thought the rejection video would be good. If you find that you get rejected by people who say you ask too many questions, you do this, you do that, what are you saying inside? And if you haven't developed that voice, what's the truth about who's been rejecting you? Well,
there it is.
Yes. We will talk to you soon. Sayonara.